Hello, it's Ramonica, real estate broker here. So I just wanted to go over some very important information for the home buyers out there. I'm going to talk about information about brokerage services. So this is something that is very important. All Texas real estate professionals are supposed to give you this form if you are a consumer, a buyer, or a client, so that you can understand what the different roles are in terms of a buyer's agent and the seller's agent, and also understand what the brokerage process is like. This form is required by Texas law. As you can see, it's highlighted right here. It says Texas law requires all real estate licensees to give the following information about brokerage services to buyers, tenants, sellers, and landlords. On this form, it talks about the type of real estate license holders. So you have a broker. A broker is responsible for all brokerage activities, including acts performed by sales agents sponsored by the broker. A sales agent must be sponsored by a broker and works with clients on behalf of the broker. I am an independent real estate broker, which means that I have the authority to operate completely on my own. I do not have to be supervised by a larger organization or another broker. If you're working with a realtor that is a licensee or just a real estate agent, that person must be supervised by either an independent real estate broker or a larger broker office, but they are not authorized to operate on their own. So that's the key difference between working with a sales agent and a broker. Also, a broker's minimum duties required by law. That means that even a sales agent has to uphold these minimum duties because they work under the supervision of a broker. A client is the person or party that the broker represents. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, about how you get represented to be a client. And our duties are to put the interest of the client above all others. That's including the broker's own interest. When you're working with a real estate professional, that's the key difference, is that we have to put your interests and your needs first. Inform the client of any material information about the property or transaction received by the broker. That means that any information that the broker or the sale agent receives about the house or about the property, about the neighborhood, they have to disclose that information with you to help you out and help you make the best buying decision. Answer the client's questions and present any offer to or counter offer from the client. So we have to make sure that if we're going back and forth in negotiation, we share that information with you and ultimately let you make the decision. Treat all parties to a real estate transaction honestly and fairly. So that means that we have to follow housing laws, housing policies, and all of those things to make sure that everyone is treated honestly and fairly. So in a real estate transaction, you have a seller's agent and you have a buyer's agent. We're only going to talk about the role of the buyer agent in this particular video. The broker becomes the buyer or tenant's agent by agreeing to represent the buyer, usually through a written representation agreement. A buyer's agent must perform the broker's minimum duties above and must inform the buyer of any material information about the property transaction known by the agent, including information disclosed to the agent by the seller or seller's agent. So that's going to be a key benefit to having a person represent you on your behalf, is because any information they find out about the property, they're going to disclose and let you know. If you're just working with an individual or you're working with someone that does not represent your best interest, then any information that they find out, they do not have to disclose that information to you. They're not obligated to disclose any information to you. And the difference between a sub-agent, I'll read it right here. It says a sub-agent is a license holder who acts as a sub-agent when aiding a buyer in a transaction without an agreement to represent the buyer. A sub-agent can assist the buyer but does not represent the buyer and must place the interest of the owner first. So that's very, very important for you to understand. So that's saying if you do not have a representation agreement or an agreement in place, even though you may be working with a real estate professional, that person is not legally obligated to you, and they're not representing your best interest. They're representing the owner's best interest. That's why you want to make sure that you sit down with the professional and sign a written agreement so that your best interest can be represented. And it also talks about to avoid disputes or all agreements between you and the broker, it's better to communicate things in writing. That's why we have buyer representation agreement. So make sure that you are signing a buyer representation agreement. And I'll go through one of those later so you can know what that entails. And then it says this notice is being provided for information purposes. This does not create an obligation for you to use the broker services. Please acknowledge receipt of this notice below to retain a copy for your records. So just because you sign the information about brokerage services does not mean that that broker or a real estate agent that had you sign this is not a legal contract. This does not mean they're representing you. It just lets you know that by law they had to give you this information and explain the roles to you. And then it'll have this information filled in, the brokers, the license number, the supervisors, the agents, and then on the bottom you just initial. Even if you're a buyer or a tenant, you would need to initial this and put a date on it. So that's information about brokerage services. If you are looking to buy or sell property in the Houston area, I'll be more than happy to work with you and walk you through the process, and we can sit down and sign a formal buyer representation agreement. Looking forward to you guys, working with you guys. Happy house hunting.